لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونتوب إليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهد الله فهو المهتد ومن يضلل فلن تجد له وليا مرشدا وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن سيدنا وحبيبنا ومولانا محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما. All praise is due to Allah, and after that all praise is due to Allah. We thank Him, we seek help from Him, we ask guidance in Him, and we seek forgiveness in Him from our own evils and from our own bad deeds. Anyone who has been guided by Allah, they are indeed guided. And anyone who has been misguided by Allah, He will never find a guardian to guide them. I bear witness. I bear witness that there is no deity worthy of worship except for Allah, the only one without partner. And I bear witness that Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is His servant and His messenger. Proceed forward. But throughout history, whenever there's been real change in society, whether it be a change that is revolutionary or a change that is evolutionary, no matter what type of change that happens, it always begins with a very, very small group of people. Those that are dedicated in their belief for the change that they're about to do. And if they persist in whatever that they're trying to change within society, then other people will follow them. And they will encourage them and be with them whenever that change is going on. And they're able to do that. So an example of that, I just want a recent example, which you can do this throughout history, and I'll give some examples of this later on. But to put that into context of what I'm talking about, let's take, for example, the Arab Spring that happened all over the Muslim world. Now, particularly what I want to focus on very briefly is the Arab Spring that happened in Egypt. And if you think about all of the, whenever this was happening, a couple of years back, whenever this was happening and there was, millions of people on the streets of Cairo, that they were there and people were admiring how big the numbers were and those type of things. But even with 1 million people that were there, whatever that I'm trying to posit here, which is that it always starts off with a small group of people, and if they are strong in their belief, then a bunch of people join them, but the vast majority of people, you won't find them nowhere. And Egypt is a classic example of that as well, and you find this throughout history. So I'll give you that example. So imagine if there's 1 million people that were in the streets of Cairo during the time of the protests. The population of Egypt is 80 million people. That only represents 1.25%. So the question I have for you was, what happened to the other 98.75% of the population of Egypt? And I can go into examples of these throughout history and be able to give you the same type of explanation. What happens to the majority of the people, the vast majority of the people that actually let history pass them by and they don't do anything except worry about how they're going to be able to maybe put food on the table, what kind of clothes they're going to buy, or what kind of cars they're going to have, those type of things. And so in each of these historical events, as I mentioned, the vast majority of people have no clue as to what's happening until it's all over. They have no clue what's happening until it's all over, and they were on the sidelines of history, if you want to call it, when they could have been a part of exactly whatever change was going on within that society for the better. There's a saying that says certain people make things happen. Some people wait for things to happen and then join in. Vast majority of people wonder what exactly happened. And those are the 3 types of people that I want to talk about in my khutbah today. The story of the seerah of our beloved Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it's no different than that. It's no different than these 3 different types of people. The people that actually were the ones that made things happen, which were the Prophet ﷺ and the companions radiallahu anhum. And then you have some people that were waiting for things to happen and then joined in. So a lot of people from the Quraysh that were just sitting back and saying, I'm perfectly fine the way I am, but if they are able to get victory, then I'll join them in whatever they're doing. But the vast majority of Arabia during the time of the Prophet, they had no clue what was happening. They just did whatever else everybody else did. And so in the 13 years that the Prophet ﷺ was in Mecca, right, it was a very, very small band of people that were there with him. In fact, if you look at it purely on the numbers perspective, you would say that the message of the Prophet during the time of Mecca was a failure. There was maybe 50, 100, 200 people out of the entire population of Mecca. And then when he moved to Medina, again, there was slowly, he was getting people to be able to join, but relative to the population of Arabia during the time, very similar to the relative to the population of Egypt when it comes to the actual people that were out there that were trying to change society, it was a very, very small group of people that was actually doing that. And you can see that, what the people that are the ones that make things happen, you can classify those people as the ones that are narrators of hadith, for example. They're either mentioned in the hadith, or they are the ones that are narrating the hadith itself. And if you look at that number of people, it's a very, very small number. And then you have the people that are around them that actually join them. So those would be like the leaders of various tribes that actually were joining the call to Islam during the time of the Prophet ﷺ. But the vast majority of the people were the ones that were just on the sideline. They were like a cattle of herd. If they were told to go this way, they went that way. If they told to go this way, they go that way. And how do we know that? Because there were many times in the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ when the leaders of a tribe would come in and they would give their shahada, and then they would go back, and then it would said that the whole tribe became Muslim. A certain group of people came, the leaders of the tribe came, they became Muslim, and they went back in the seerah reports that the whole tribe became Muslim. Now I can almost guarantee you that that leader didn't go back and ask every single one of them, are you going to say the shahada or not? Are you going to join in the cause of Islam or not? That didn't happen. They basically, his followers, did exactly what they were told to be able to do in this example. So, the separation of these three types of people, can be in action as well as in faith. You can have both types of these three different types that I mentioned here. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions these three types of people in the Quran, and the first two types He actually mentions in Surah Waqi'ah. And in Surah Waqi'ah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he mentioned the first type, and He calls these people as-sabiqun, the foremost. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala calls them as-sabiqun, the ones that are, whenever there's something to be done, they are the ones that are the first ones to raise their hand, the first ones to say, okay, I'm ready to do this, how do I do it? And they're looking for that one person to be able to lead them as the companions were led by the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions about them, right? He mentions that these are the people that are foremost in their faith in this life, and they will be the foremost in faith in the hereafter as well. And then they have attained the highest of paradise. But this is interesting that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions about them. He says about them that a number of them will be of the people of the old, meaning that in the olden days there were a vast number of them. Now there will be a vast number of them in the earlier generations, and there will be a small number of them in the later generations. These are as-sabiqun. The foremost in this life are the ones that are foremost in the hereafter. Now, what do we get from these type of people? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions they are the ones who are closest to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? They are the ones that are closest to Him. And the description given to them is actually twofold. One of them is that they will be given the best of Jannah, Jannatul Firdaus. And they will be with the Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in Jannah. And the second description that he mentions, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions about them, as I mentioned, is that He says that in the later generations, they will be qalilun min al-akhirin. There will be a very, very small number of them in the hereafter. In the later generations. Now, the small number doesn't physically have to do with numbers itself. It could be a percentage population. Right? So it doesn't have to be that because there were 100 of them during the time of the Prophet, there has to be less than that in this generation here. What it does mean, however, is that if you look at the percentage of the number that actually did that during the time of the Prophet, and you compare that to the percentage of the number that come in this generation, the percentages will be much smaller. Even though the numbers might be much greater, and you have that. If you have 1 billion people, 1% of the population already makes up 10 million. It's a relative number. Whereas if you look at 10 million, it's probably the entire population of Arabia during the time of the Prophet ﷺ. So it's a percentage thing, not an actual number thing that we have to be able to do. The second type of people, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes them in the same surah, and the next description that He gives is of those that are called Ashabul Yamin, those that are given their book of deeds in the right hand. And in this, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives the description of these people as the ones that are ثُلَّةٌ مِّنَ الْأَوَّلِينَ وَثُلَّةٌ مِّنَ الْآخِرِينَ. Those are a number of the people of the older generations and a number of the people of the later generations. These are Ashabul Yamin. And for the majority of people that are out there, these people, they were the ones they are given paradise, but not the highest point. They are given, they do good deeds, but they're not the best of the good deeds doers. They're just kind of like underneath the best of the best, right? Maybe they're like the best of the worst, if you want to think about it from that perspective. Now we have a description of the second group of people as well. You know, they will be the ones who are righteous, right? They will be believers in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but they're not the leaders. And it's very, very important to mention over here that you need to have both types of people. You need to have the Sabiqun, but you also need to have the Ashabul Yamin. In fact, there's a story of Ali bin Abi Talib. And some of the people came to Ali and they asked him, Ya Ali, they said, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen. They said, when the time of Abu Bakr and the time of Umar and the time of Uthman, there was no fitna in the Ummah. And everything was fine. But in your times, there's a lot of fitna. And so they asked him, said, well, how is that possible? And so Ali, he responded back and he said, because during the time of Abu Bakr, the time of Umar, and the time of Uthman, they had followers like me. And during my time, I have followers like you. And so that's where the fitna is coming from. So it's very, very important to keep in mind is that followers and leaders have to work hand in hand. If you don't have one without the other, then the whole thing falls apart. If you have bad leaders with good followers, it falls apart. If you have good leaders with bad followers, it still falls apart. And so we have to have both to be able to do that. And then the last group of people that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in Surah Hajj, that I want to describe over here, is the group that's I want to call the group that is the troubling one. The troubling those who always wonder what actually happened. And they don't realize, so that in Egypt, for example, the 98.75% of the population, that all of a sudden they were too busy in their making falafels and making their shawarmas, and they forgot exactly what happened in the actual revolution or the evolution that actually happens. And Surah Hajj, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions these people and He describes them as, He says, وَمِنَ النَّاسِ يَعْبُدُونَ عَلَى الْخَرْفِ. Right? That there are those people and of those are those who worship Allah on an edge. They worship Allah on an edge. If they are touched by good, then he is reassured by it. Meaning that he feels comfortable with whatever good that's comes. And then if he's struck by trials and tribulations, then he turns on his face to another direction, meaning he loses whatever faith that he has. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions about them, He says, خَسِرَ الدُّنْيَا وَالْآخِرَةِ. He says they are lost in this world and in the hereafter. ذَلِكَ هُمُ الْخُسْرَانُ الْمُبِينُ. He said those are the ones that are in manifest loss. Right? So those are the types of people that we have that are always walking an edge. They're like on a fence or on an edge of a blade. And if the wind blows one way, they're going to fall one way. If the wind blows another way, they're just going to fall another way. And so if something good's happening, they're the best of Muslims, they're going to come to the masjid, they'll be the foremost in the prayer line, everything like that. And as soon as something happens where some trial or some tribulation that approaches them, they're the ones that are basically lost and they have no idea what to do, and they're lost in this life and in the hereafter as well. Walking on thin ice is another description of these types of people. And so what we have to do is we have to keep in mind is that as we're choosing between the different types of people that are, the Sabiqun, you have the Ashab al-Yamin, and then you have those that are living on an edge. The question we have to ask ourselves is, what type of people are we going to be? In this life, what type of people are we going to be? Are we going to be the ones that are the foremost, so that in the hereafter we are the foremost? Are we going to be the ones that always are the followers, which is perfectly fine, right? Always the ones that are followers, and so we'll get into Jannah, but we won't be in the highest of Jannah. And the one we want to try to avoid, are we going to be the ones that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions that are on a razor's edge, that are on a very, very easy, very sharp blade, that you can fall one way or another. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we ask Him to make us of those that are as-sabiqun in this life and in the hereafter. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, as-salatu wa salam ala ashraf al-anbiya wal mursaleen, Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So, just as a recap, I was mentioning 3 different types of people in the first khutbah that I had. Now, these type of people you can find throughout history, no matter where you look. And whether it be any kind of a revolution or an evolution that's happening in society, changing events, paradigm shifts that happen in different countries, in different nations, in different areas. You're going to find those people are the ones that are the agents of the change. They're the ones who are the foremost, they're the ones who are leading the change. They follow very, very close on, very, very early on, whenever that change is about to happen, because they believe in something and they're willing to die for that belief. These are the people that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala we can classify in the category of as-sabiqun. Sabiqun are the ones that are foremost. They do everything. If they know that's the truth, khalas, there's nothing else to be able to worry about. We know this is the truth and we have to follow it. And then the second type of people, or the first type Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions as a reminder, He says these are the type that are, they're plentiful in number in the earlier generations, but they're small in number during the later generations. ثُلَّةٌ مِّنَ الْأَوَّلِينَ وَقَلِيلٌ مِّنَ الْآخِرِينَ. That they're plentiful in number in the earlier generations, and they're small in number in the later generations. These are the ones who are foremost in their faith, or in whatever it is that they're doing. The second type of people are the ones that are the early adopters, if you want to call them. They are not the ones that are the leaders. They're not going to be the ones to be able to stand up and take any kind of punishment that they can for the beliefs that they have. But they are the ones that as soon as they see a little bit of success is happening, they're going to join in and to be able to do that. These Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala calls the Ashab al-Yamin, as an analogy. Ashab al-Yamin are the ones that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, ثُلَّةٌ مِّنَ الْأَوَّلِينَ وَثُلَّةٌ مِّنَ الْآخِرِينَ. That there are plenty in number in the earlier generations, and there are also plenty in number in the latter generations that actually provide. And the ones that we have to be very, very careful of, and we have to ask ourselves, make sure that we don't fall into this category that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions. There are those who live their life on an edge. That right on the edge that they're living, and so if everything good goes for them, then they're perfectly fine. If a little bit of trial and tribulation comes, then they fall apart. Or they are the ones that in a movement that happens to be able to rectify society from all any kind of ills that they have, they are the ones that, they'll be maybe believers in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they'll be going about their business as if nothing else is happening in the world. Right? Nothing else is happening. So as soon as something befalls them, they don't have the strength to be able to pull together. They fall apart. And that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for them, He calls them khasira dunya wal akhirah. That they are lost in this world and in the hereafter. That these are the ones who have a manifest loss that we have. And of these type of people, and the reason why I'm mentioning all of these types of people is that because we have a lot of things that are going on in this world today. We have a lot of things, a lot of turmoil that's going on in the world today. From the ISIS that is in Syria, and I call them ISIS on purpose because they are the non-Islamic state of Iraq and Syria. So the ISIS that's going on in Syria, to Iraq, to Afghanistan, Palestine, all of the things, even here, maybe you want to call it here in Malaysia as well, there are many ills that are happening in society. And this not only that affect the Muslim community, but they also affect the world over. And it's happening, as I mentioned, even in Malaysia itself. And these are the types of people that it's not only about society. I mean, these people you don't categorize, but even if you look at your industry that you work in, whether you're in the legal profession, in the accounting profession, in Islamic finance, whatever profession you are, in your industry itself, you're going to find the same type of people. There are those people who are the ones that are very active in writing theoretical papers, they're speaking at conferences, and doing all those type of things. And those would be, in your industry, the sabiqun. And then you have those people in your industry that might not be the ones that are writing the papers and are speaking, but the ones that maybe will attend the conferences, and they will be wholeheartedly supporting you in whatever it is that you're doing. These, let's call the people of ashabul yamin. And then you have the vast majority of the people in any industry that basically go there for work every day. They check in at 9 o'clock, they check out at 5 o'clock, they could care less what's happening as long as they're getting paid and their family has bread on the table. These are the ones that, again, when everything is going fine, there's no problem. They are believers, they're doing fine, they're doing it. But as soon as something goes wrong, they lose their job, or something else, turmoil happens, they are the ones that fall on the other side and they become lost. So that's in an industry. You can find that in your universities. If you're going to college, you can find that in universities, the same group of people that are going to be there. You're going to find that in the companies that you work for, the same large companies, the same type of people that you're going to have. And what we have to decide for ourselves is what type of great people are we going to be? What type of individuals are we going to be? And it's easy to be able to just go to school. It's easy to be able to just go to work and be able to clock in at 9 o'clock and check out at 5 o'clock. It's easy to be able to do that and just stay with your family and be content with whatever it is that you have. But if you get caught in a comfortable situation or in a comfortable mode, then you will be living your life as if on an edge. Because you're not going to be ready for the changes that happen. And change is always happening within society. And if you're not ready for the change, then you might fall one way or another, we don't know. And so you constantly have to be striving for those people that are in the category of the leaders. And if you can't, you're already there, you're already of those that are foremost, then you're constantly striving for even a higher goal than that, which would be that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts us amongst the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in Jannah. Now, we have this in the example of our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, where, afterwards, the story of this surah is that after the Prophet ﷺ gets the revelation, he comes back and he tells Khadija, Zammiluni, cover me, right? And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala addresses the Prophet very, very directly, and he says, Ya ayyuhal muddaththir. He says, oh, you wrapped up. Qum fa'anzir. Stand up and warn. That's the directive that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving the Prophet ﷺ. So let's look at this on a metaphorical basis. Right? Not literally, this is something that's literal that the Prophet, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling the Prophet, and also literally telling us to be able to get out of our shell, but it also applies on a metaphorical basis as well, because the wrapped up means that you're in a state of comfort. Ya ayyuhal muddaththir, oh you, even individually ourselves, oh you, the ones that are comfortable with the life that you're living. They're comfortable with the food that you're getting on your table, the salary that you're receiving from your company, whatever it is. Oh, you who are comfortable in the situation that you find yourself in. Qum fa'anzir. Rise, meaning take off that cloak that you have. Take off that comfortable situation that you find yourself in and push society for the better. Take off qum fa'anzir and warn, meaning that you have to get out there and do something. You can't just basically sit there and do nothing and be able to just live your life in the masjid, live your life in dhikr, and live your life as if nothing else is happening around you in society. We have to be the ones which are ashabul yamin. We stand up and do things. We have to be the ones that are sabiqun. We have to be the ones that are in the foremost, being able to lead whatever ills that are happening in society. We cannot be the ones that are just sitting in our homes and doing nothing. We cannot be the 98.75%. We have to be at least the 1.25% or the 0.1% of the people that actually are the agents of change that we find ourselves within the ills of society. We have to be the ones. And I'm not going to judge as to what it is you have to change. There's many, many things in this life that are ills that are going on. And you have to find a cause that you are passionate about. Maybe it's not politics, maybe it's not economics, but there's something there that will get you riled up. There's something there that makes you, when you're watching TV and you get your hairs lift up, There's something there that your heart begins to feel uneasy when you see something, hear something, read something that's there. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put something there. That is why, for example, you have societies in America and other places that will be about saving the spotted owl, just to give you an example. Now the spotted owl in America, as an example of this, makes up 0.1% of all the birds that are out there. And yet there are people out there that are willing to fight for a spotted owl. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, whatever ills there are in society, He has made people in this world to be able to take care of those ills. So whatever it is that you find, even if you find that in Malaysia, for example, the streets are dirty, and that's your passion, that you want to make sure that the streets of Malaysia are clean. Fine, get out there, right? Take off your comfortable clothes that you have, get out there and teach people why the dirtying of the streets of Malaysia is not a good idea. It might be about the deforestation that's happening. It might be about political, economical, whatever it is that you feel passionate about. We have to be the ones sitting in this Jum'ah today to make a conviction that before we leave here, we make a dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes us the agents of change, not the ones that will be living history on the sidelines when nobody will remember us. Can we make that promise? That's really the question we have for ourselves today. Can we make that promise? Whatever you feel passionate about, you are willing to take off your clothes. Not be a mudathir, but take your clothes off, rise and warn the society in whatever it is that we're doing. So with that, inshallah, I'll close as I call to action to be able to think about within your own lives what it is that you can change. What it is that you can change, and inshallah Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blesses us in being able to give us the tawfiq to understand it, the strength to be able to push forward with it, and then the sabr or the patience to be able to live through it when difficulties come within us, and not be of those people that live on the edge, al-harf, that when one thing happens good to us, we're fine, but as soon as something bad happens, we pull away or we get lost and we lose khasir ad-dunya wal akhirah. We're lost in this life and the hereafter. These are the ones that are clearly the ones that are in loss. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect us from being of those people. رَبَّنَا آتِنَا فِي الدُّنْيَا حَسَنَةً وَفِي الْآخِرَةِ حَسَنَةً وَقِنَا عَذَابَ النَّارِ رَبَّنَا لَا تُؤَاخِذْنَا إِن